Steve Kitney, welcome to Over the Bonnet.
Thanks very much, mate. It's good to be here.
You've got a passion for bees. Let's find out how it all started.
I did the dreaded thing, and I went to the markets one morning, and I bought a beekeeping book just as a matter of interest, like what guys do and ladies do. They see a little book and go, oh, a little bit of an interest, and next thing I had 3 hives, and then before I knew it, I had about 80.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you get to that sort of stage?
Oh, it's a accumulation. It's contagious. That's what I tell everybody that comes in that starts beekeeping. I says, be careful, it's contagious, because they go, oh, I only want one. So you go, oh, 1 going on 5, and if they've got 3 or 4, it's got 3 or 4 going on 10. And that's just how it is. It's you get 1, and then you've got 3, and a lot of it will depend on the space that they have for their apiary site, or apiary sites if they're fortunate enough to have more than one place.
You talk about you've expanded to sort of 0 to 80 hives. How long did that take, and how did it happen? Talk us through the process.
Oh, I can't remember. It's like 30 years ago plus. We had 3.5 acres at the time, and it just grew. Every time there was some hives for sale, I'd go and buy them from older beekeepers just getting out of beekeeping because they just got too old, to manage the hives. Because when I was doing it at that stage, it was before small hive beetle, which we have now, and everybody was still running full depth supers, and that's the way it was. And a lot of the beekeepers that I bought hives off were in their 80s, and some of them in their 90s, still beekeeping fine, a lot of good knowledge, but yeah, really dilapidated equipment, because unfortunately beekeepers are notorious for being, short arms and long pockets, and make the equipment go a long way. But it was all good fun, and then along came small hive beetle, and I lost 75 hives to small
Really?
hive beetle. Yeah, and not just me, everybody across the board. I think the DPI put some stats out a couple of years later that commercial beekeepers lost about 40%, and hobbyists lost anything 50 to 80%.
That's a big number.
It's huge. It's huge.
And how's it being combated these days?
Oh, since then we've learned how to handle it, but when it came in, as the story goes, it came in one of the containers from South Africa on the Sydney Olympics.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it just got into New South Wales, and away it went. We didn't know how to treat it. It was a new thing, and we didn't know really what it was. It just looked like a little beetle, and we got, it's only a little beetle. But it does such devastation.
How does it do that?
Oh, the beetles fly 8 kilometres, so they can go a lot further than the bees can, and they lay their eggs predominantly, like I found, in the pollen cells and the pollen stores in the brood box, but not just in pollen stores, in honey cells as well. And then the beetle grubs hatch out, and they just eat their way through it, and they defecate in it, and it just runs down the sides of the frames and in this horrible yellowy mess, and it just goes across your hive until the queen goes, we're out of here, and then
They swarm.
they go, because there's nothing left there for them to produce on, because it's all taken over by grubs. And amazingly, the small hive beetle grub is like about 10 times the size of the beetle.
Oh, wow.
So then the grubs go out the entrance and into the ground. They burrow into the ground and pupae in the ground, and voila, another beetle comes out. And every female beetle can lay 400 eggs. So it's devastating, and it spreads really quickly.
because the ecosystem of the bee is fairly fragile.
Yeah, it is really fragile. Bees are remarkably fragile, but they bounce back pretty quickly if you give them some help and protect them just a little bit. They can bounce back enormously. With beekeepers' help too, feed them if they need feeding and nurture them along. But on the beetles, American beekeepers spend on an average about $35 to $40 per hive per year on sprays underneath their beehives.
Wow.
Just to kill the small hive beetle grubs. And that's a huge amount of money. You're talking about beekeepers that have 10 or 15,000 hives over there.
Wow.
And you're talking
A lot of money.
$30, $40 a hive. You know, it's been pretty devastating.
For a professional beekeeper, that would be really affecting the bottom line.
Yeah, I don't know whether the Australian beekeepers do it like that because they move their hives around quite a lot. And, you know, the saying goes, you know, you're not really a big beekeeper until you're a truck driver. But, yeah, Australian beekeepers, the bigger ones, they do semi-loads and it's basically chasing the flowers as they go around.
Talk about the magic of the honeybee. What is so special about them?
They produce more food than they can use. One of the best pollinators that we have on the planet, I think Einstein made a little statement saying that without the honeybees, the humans have about 4 years on the planet. It's
wow,
pretty subtle. Modern days, I think we could last a little bit longer, but it would have a huge impact on our population because of the pollination.
They talk about the population of bees being in danger. Is it as bad as is often written in the media?
I would say it's underrated. It could be a lot worse. I think in Europe, and I'm not sure, but they're going to allow the bee pesticides back again from lobbying from the chemical companies, just when they're starting to get the bee numbers up in Europe. It's a pretty sad thing when the basic bottom line is how important they are, but nobody's there's not enough backing for the bees, not enough powerful backing like a chemical company has in dollar to spend on lobbying to get their products out.
The structure of the hive, there's 3 types of bees in the hive. How does it all operate?
Well, you have the queen bee, which is she's just laying eggs, and approximately 1,500 to 2,000 a day, which is enormous. And then you have your worker bees, which run the hive. They look after the hive. New bees that hatch out become nursemaid bees, so they look after the brood and feed the young, and they're nursemaid bees. And then they go to becoming guard bees for the hive and cleaning the hive. And then lastly, they become foraging bees, where they go out and find nectar and pollen and bring it back to the hive. And that's where most of them die, is out on the wing, because they basically flap their little wings off at 200 times a second.
Wow.
So you get an older bee, you can actually see the edges of the wings, they're starting to fray and shred. And then you have your drone bee, which only mates with the queen. That's all they're for, the male bee. Usually, like a lot of the lady beekeepers say, typical male doesn't do anything in the hive. And if you ever lock your hive up and leave it locked up accidentally for a spare day or two, they're the first ones that get bumped off. Or they'll go and kill them all, because they do absolutely nothing except to eat stuff. And they're not stuck to one hive. They come and go out of any hive. So they're a problem for disease spreading. If you had varroa mite or something, which we don't luckily in Australia yet, because everybody says we will get it one day, they will transfer it from hive to hive because they just go in and out hives.
So they're the tarts of the bee world.
Yeah, you could say that, yeah.
How does it work that they do go from hive to hive, where the workers are really bound to one hive?
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's not. I'm not up to speed on how do they do it, but I've read that they do go from hive to hive as they choose. I don't believe they just go hive jumping. I think they go out looking for them or on a mating flight, and if they're not successful, they'll go back to any old hive that they can come across. Because when they mate with the queen, it's like a bee sting. It tears their abdomen out and they just die after that. So that's their whole purpose, is one mating with a queen, and that's it. It's all over.
That's a fairly high price to pay.
You get that in the insect world.
When you first got into it, you said it was quite contagious. Why is that? What do you put it down to?
It's just the sheer pleasure of it, you know. Take yourself, for example. You've got 2 hives going on 10 or 12, I hear. So, a classic example. It just grabs hold of you.
I found that it is a very relaxing pastime. What do you put that down to? Because obviously you've caught the bug very early on.
It's relaxing because you have to, because you can't hurry them. The bees are going to do what they're going to do in their own sweet time, and it just takes time. When you get your new hive, and your new hive with its nucleus, it's only 4 or 5 frames, and you've got to wait for it to build out to its 8 or 10 frame box, and that's what you got to do. Just wait, and it's nothing you can do is going to hurry it up. It's Mother Nature. If it brings some bad weather, it will slow it up, and if there's good weather and lots of flowers come out, it'll speed it up. There's nothing you can do. You just wait.
You're very weather dependent, though.
Oh, they can be, yeah. They don't like thunderstorms. A few years ago, we had a patch of nice weather, but every 2 or 3 days, we'd have a shower of rain for 3 or 4 minutes. That's all it took. And it would just wash all the nectar and the pollen out of the flowers. And then after 2 or 3 days, the trees were just getting their nectar and pollen back into the flowers again for the bees, and would have another 5-minute burst of rain. And after a couple of weeks, the bees were pretty cranky because they were working their little butts off and not a lot of return. And they just get angry.
And what happens then?
Oh, they recover, but you just leave them alone. Don't go there.
How do you know when the bees are angry? What are they doing different?
When you're done a few hives and opened a few hives, you start to hear the tone of the bees. And most of the time when you're robbing the hives, or as other people call it, harvesting, beekeepers call them robbing because that's what you're doing, you're robbing the hives. When you're robbing the honey out, the frames, you can get away with that, and it's still usually fairly calm, and you can hear the tone of the bees. And then you'll go into the brood box underneath, and if you don't keep the smoke up, and depending on the mood of what flowers they've been in and you will hear the tone of the bees change quite remarkably. Time to put the box back together and just get out, because they get really angry. They're just going to get angry. The smoke masks the alarm pheromone that they put out. So when you're robbing, even without smoke, they can get angry. So that's what the smoke does. It masks the alarm pheromone. I think also it may stimulate that there's a fire close by, and I've heard that they go and have a feed of honey and get a gut full of honey, and they don't sting as much because they can't bend their little bodies.
Oh, I'm full.
Yeah, basically. It's a good theory. True or not, I don't know, but it's a good story. But that's what the smoke does, mask the alarm pheromone.
Do you do any work in your hives without the smoke?
Very rarely. I've actually robbed hives without using smoke because they were so busy bringing pollen and nectar in. from a tree that was very close and loaded with really good flowers, a lily-pilly. And they were too busy to worry about me. They were just flat out.
How do you know when they're on the flow and things are really working well in the hive?
They'll fill up the frames full of honey very quickly when there's a big honey flow on. I rob my hives at home, and my lily pillies, I've got a driveway and it's got lily pillies down one side. They're not huge, they're 3.5 meters high, but they're quite bushy. And they had a really good flowering this year. And I robbed all the hives, and I had about 20, 25 at home. And I had these overseas people, one of my bee equipment suppliers, that had never actually managed to have time in the hive. So I kept one hive full of honey so we could rob it and do a little demo, and they could get a little bit of hands-on. And I said, well, I already robbed the other ones last week, or about a week and a half ago, so they'll be empty and I'll show you them. And I opened up these hives and they were all full after about 10 or 12 days.
Wow.
Because the flight time, the trees were only 4 or 5 meters away, so that's an important thing. Huge amounts of flowers and huge amounts of nectar. And they had filled these boxes up in a week. And that happens. It's not a common occurrence, but it does happen at a regular time. And usually trees only have a good flowering about once every 4 years. That's pretty average. So,
how's the season going this year?
On the Sunshine Coast, it's going pretty well. But up towards this way, up in Gympie area here, not so well. And out west, not as well. It's very dry out over the range. But you have these patches where they've had a reasonable amount of rain and the flowers are pretty good. But there's nothing spectacular across the board.
One of the things with ants, when they build the little volcano sort of turret around their nest, are bees good weather forecasters? Can you tell that rain's coming through the bees?
Well, I don't know, but this year there was an early swarming. Everybody had lots of swarms very early in the piece. And about the same time, the Weather Bureau announced that the La Nina had turned around and the ocean temperatures had changed. So they're forecasting a very wet cyclonic summer. Do they know that already? And they're doing early swarmings to get their new colonies, because swarming is a natural occurrence. And everybody said, they're swarming very early this year. Are they doing that early to get their new colonies established before the wet weather turn up? I don't know, but it's a funny occurrence that all of a sudden we're having an early swarming and it's going to be a really wet summer.
A lot of behaviour that bees exhibit is quite remarkable. One of the things that interests you about bee behaviour?
I'm not one for getting into that. A lot of people do. A lot of my customers from my shop are really into the bees and behaviours, but I just like the honey, looking after them. I'm not deep into the infrastructure and what they do and things like that. I find it fascinating that they can build wax, and they make wax in little tiny flakes. I mean, they're tiny little flakes. And a lot of people take this for granted. It's just beeswax. We just make candles and we make foundation in it. And I would have it at my shop probably about 1.5 tons of beeswax. And they secrete these little flakes out of the side of their abdomen, and the other bees come and get them and chew them up and make them into comb that they put the honey cells in. And you've got to think about how much is made, and I've got 1.5 tons, and I don't even have a lot just to make sheets of foundation. The same applies with honey. There's a bit of a variant on how much honey a bee produces in its lifetime, but somewhere between 1/8 and 1/12 of a teaspoon from one bee. That's its whole lifetime's production.
Wow.
So when you get your toast or your porridge in the morning and you go squirt with the old honey pot and you put 2 or 3 teaspoons of honey.
It's about 2 or 3 bees.
No, that's 36 or 40 bees complete lifetime's production you just put on your toast.
Wow, they give a lot.
They give a huge amount. It takes a rough figure they've come up with is 500 bees to make a kilo of honey, and they fly equivalent to 3 times around the earth.
Go on.
To produce that one little tub of honey. It's a huge effort. And the younger people go, oh, you just go and buy it from the shop. It's like milk. Where does milk come? Oh, the supermarket. Well, same way. There's a lot of things that people don't realise. I actually put on my honey jars, on my labels on my honey jars that I sell, I put a little side square with, did you know about bee facts, like how much honey a bee produces in its lifetime, how many times they flap their wings, 200 times a second. Just little facts like that people are interested in that didn't have a clue on how much work goes in honey.
It sounds fascinating, but also what fascinates me about them is the fact that there's so many of them, yet they all know what to do.
I don't know whether we know what to do. I think a lot of people come to me and say, oh, bees are very clever. It's instinct. It's built-in instinct of what they do. This bee does this job, and that's what it does. The queen lays her eggs, that's what she does. I find it very interesting that it takes 16 days to make a queen bee, which lays all the eggs, and it takes 21 days for a worker to grow. I quite find that quite remarkable. I can't get over that one. I would have thought it would be the other way around for sure, but it's not.
I read in a book that apparently the worker bee, the full rotation around the sun is 21 days. And the queen it's a sun animal, and hence they love the sunny days. And the queen is not quite fully sun developed, and the drone goes, I think, 23, 26 days, I'm not sure of the number, and has more moon influence. If that's the case, I don't know, but it's just interesting that the queen has the shorter development.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wasn't aware of those combinations of numbers. That's a new one to me.
With the COVID crisis, do you find that more people are going back to their roots and starting to get interested in beekeeping?
I couldn't tell you that one for sure, but we have had a big influx and expansion on customer bases. Whether it's a combination of the shop just getting known more, and also people looking for something to do. But I wanted to buy a dog, and you can't buy a dog for love for money, and they've gone up in price enormously because there's such a big demand, because people are staying home with their, and they want some sort of companion or something like that. Markets have just gone through the roof because people have abandoned shopping centres like no tomorrow and starting to frequent marketplaces now. So yeah, there could be a bit of a turnaround in people's habits and wanting to do something different. Yeah. But yeah, the Bee Positive shop is going crazy at the moment. It's trying to keep up with everybody wanting their products.
How did it start?
Well, I've been beekeeping for a long time, and my other business was in a bit of a lull because of the economy that goes up and down, and we were in the down at the time. And we had the bank manager come out and see us, and bank managers actually do come and see you if you owe them enough money. So, so we were just talking, and I said, I was like to open a beekeeping shop, and she just said, I can see you really want to do it. Just do it. I've gone, yeah, okay then, let's do it. And it just took that little nudge, the bank manager, just do it. And so the next trip I did over to China, because I was already buying equipment over there, I found some beekeeping suppliers and we started a tiny little bee shop.
While you were still running your other business?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
I bought a company called Classic Trailers that made trailers for motorbikes. That's all it did. And I turned it upside down. We took away, it was a good product, but it lacked finish. Now, just from previous jobs, working in all sorts of places, like I used to work for David Jones, and I used to work for Ford Motor Company in assembling. So you just pick up things on how to do things and how to present products for what customers like. So I just finished the trailers off and changed things from aluminium trims to stainless steel, more colour variety, and in the process of that, I formulated how to make metallic and pearl gel coats, which nobody else knew how to do. There was already the metallic gel coat like they have on ski boats, which is like you cut, the glitter is like you cut it up with a pair of scissors, it's so coarse. But we're talking colours that cars run, the metallics and pearl coats. And we worked out how to make metallic and pearl gel coats.
Can you share? How did you do it?
Mind your own business. It was really funny because I had one of my ex-employees that I actually put on while he had a broken leg. He got the sack from his previous employer because he had a broken leg and couldn't come to work. And he came looking for a job, and he says, I get my plaster off next week. And I says, you're hired. I just so happened to be looking for a glasser. And he'd done his fiberglass apprenticeship, or his little, before it was an apprenticeship, and really keen and hungry, 17-year-old, keen and hungry to go. And I showed him the glass room that we had. We only had a tiny little glass room, fiberglass room, and he basically just picked up the ball and ran with it. And a brilliant fiberglasser, really brilliant. At 17? Yeah, he just needed to be let go. You know, he'd gone to the school, he'd learnt all this new stuff, and his old boss and other workers said, look, we've been glassing for 25 years. You can't teach us anything new. Well, he could. And so we started producing new shapes, new trailer designs, and metallic and pearl gel coats. And a few years later, when he left and moved down to Sydney, he rang me up one day and he said, I was down the Sydney Boat Show, and there's a company there, and they've got all these metallic and pearl metallic gel coats. And he's gone, oh, these are very interesting. And the rep says, oh yeah, we've invented these, and we've got a copyright on them. And he said, oh, that's fairly good. Where's your silver? Oh, we haven't got the silver ready yet because it's a little bit difficult. And he's opened his wallet and pulled out one of my cards, and he said, heck, this is my ex-boss. Give him a call. We've been doing it for about 10 or 15 years. And his face just went all to pieces because their patents weren't worth anything after that, because we'd already done it. You can only paint a new patent. And we didn't tell anybody. It was our product.
Did you think about patenting the invention?
No. But I didn't tell anybody how to do it because my competitors would love to know how I did it.
Still?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually quite easy. But it's not something that you can do on a big scale. We made products that were a metre and a half long by a metre wide, and you could spray them up. You start doing caravan panels or boats, no, you just got into trouble, and it just didn't work.
Sort of like a boutique product.
Yeah, it was a boutique product. I made big boys' toys. That's what they wanted. They want the pizzazz and just present the product that they want. We used to have trailers in the showroom. We'd have 5 or 6 lined up, and they'd have all the stainless trims all polished up and metallics and pearls. You'd have blues and reds and silvers and light greys. And they'd walk in the door and go, wow, too late, they're sold. You just had to get the one that matched their bike, or they wanted it, no matter what, without even looking at the price.
What are these guys carting around in their trailers?
Oh,
because I don't think I've seen too many.
Camping equipment. If you go camping on a bike, there's not a lot of stuff you can carry on a bike, especially if you've got a pillion on the back. And I know a lot of them, their vanity bag is a big priority, So it just made camping on a motorbike just much more fun. You could put your pillow off your bed. You go camping and you got your pillow off your bed at home. You just sleep better. Tables, chairs, a decent tent that you can stand up and put your pants on like a human being instead of lying around on the floor trying to pull your jeans on or something like that. All those little niceties all used to fit into a trailer. The trick was making the trailer tow like it wasn't there, which we managed to do. We had lots of people come back and say, towing one of our classic trailers is like it's on rails. It just tows behind the bike.
How did you attach it to the bike?
With a tow bar.
Obviously with the tow bar, but how did you attach the tow bar to the bike?
They bolt on. We make tow bars. We've got over 300 design tow bars. And when I first bought Classic, I think we had 10 tow bars, 10 models, and now we've got 300, maybe 350 models.
So you're still in that business?
We still make the tow bars, but we don't make the trailers anymore. I've still got the equipment to make trailers, but I'd like to sell it off to a father and son to keep it going. And they'd get the tow bars and the trailer as a big package because they fit together, and one without the other is really it is really a dead loss. I've had several people want to make them. A few have come to the factory, but a few I've just gone, what are you looking at this business for? Like, do you like motorbikes? No, I don't like motorbikes. Well, why are you interested in a motorbike trailer business? No. Or, I hate fiberglass. Well, get lost. And you've got to be able to make stuff these days. Create it with your hands. Make stuff. Getting very hard to find people that can make stuff.
What do you put that down to?
Education and school. That they've taken away the technical classes out of schools.
Okay.
When I went to school, sure, it was in New Zealand. When you're 11 and 12, you're in an intermediate school, and they found out what you did well, whether you're good at woodwork or engineering, or you're good at arithmetic and maths and geography. That would be the decider on your next level of high school, of where they were going to point you. And they only sort of pointed you. Then they refined it a bit more as you got older in high school. You're better at woodwork or you're better at engineering, so they increase your classes in woodwork or engineering, because you're good with your hands or whatever. And that separated the academics from the people that could make stuff.
Most people, though, that can make stuff and are handy with their hands, they go into a trade. Do you think that's not happening enough?
Yeah, but it's in school where you get that boost along. I remember in our woodwork school, and then in your early school years it was called woodwork, and then it became carpentry school, your carpentry classes, and in your early stage it was metalwork, but in high school it was the engineering classes. So you got that little bit of distinction. But in the intermediate school, everybody did everything, including the girls. They were in the woodwork and the metalwork classes as well, and you went to the cooking and sewing classes as well. So you learned how to feed yourself in cooking. Just feed yourself. Just make toast and baked beans and whatever. Just be able to feed yourself. And you learned how to sew a button on a shirt and do a repair. Just common skills that I think everybody should have as growing up skills. The girls in woodwork learnt what a claw hammer was. They learned how to nail a hammer in. They learned how to use a hacksaw, do a little bit of soldering. Just basics. But, a little bit of knowledge to get you in trouble maybe, but basics. Nowadays, you get young kids that are 17 and 18, and I've had a few at my factory, sort of like a job familiarity from the schools.
Work experience.
Well, that's probably what it should have been. And they don't know what a file is. They don't know what a hammer is. They don't know that there's about 10 different types of hammers and a range of files in the engineering shop. They're just not there. That's stuff that we learnt in basic schooling. But the education system now goes, that's for the employer to teach. The employer shouldn't be teaching basic stuff like that. He wants to refine it and get them going, but
get them working.
Not teaching them kindergarten stuff. And that's the sad thing. Our young people can't build stuff anymore, and I think Australia's paying for it. And they're going to pay for it for a long time if they don't fix it. That's my view. Because we find it very hard for us to get people into maybe buying my business. And the trailer business is a really good business to buy because they can't make stuff without a CAD drawing. Where are your drawings for your trailers? There were no drawings. There was a sketch, a basic sketch on a piece of paper. That looks pretty good. We'll make that and set the platform up and build it.
You talk about young people and education and, getting into something like manufacturing. What about young people and bees? Is it something that young people are getting into?
Yeah, there's a few young people getting to bees and they love it. I've got some of my youngest beekeepers are 8 and 9 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and they're the beekeeper because mum and dad are not into it. It's the young fella's got the bee suit, and it's not just the boys. The girls got one as well, and they're the beekeeper. Mum and dad stand away and look, and they do it all. And my first young fella, George, I actually had him a suit specially made and flown out for him for his Christmas present. Yeah, the grandma and grandpa bought all the equipment for him. Mum and dad bought the bees, the beehive, and grandpa and grandma bought all the bee suit and the smoker and all the tools. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
How did he go?
He's still beekeeping. He's great. Yeah, yeah. So we had this. We measured him up, and I rang up my good friend who makes my bee suits and said, "Can you please make one of these and send it over?" And she did, because she loves making bee suits for kids. I think it's great.
You talk about the expansion of bees and more people are coming in to your shop. I've noticed since I first went in there many years ago that it's turned around from a very small area to a very large area now.
Yeah.
Is it going to continue to grow?
That's a really hard one because I've basically grown it out of the shops. I would have to sell off one of the other businesses. I'd have to get rid of the motorcycle trailers and tow bars to use up that space to expand the shop a little bit more. But I think we've got the shop to about where we need it to go. I think out the back needs to be refined more. In the workshop, we can make better. If we lose some of the other work that we do, we have more time to do more bee stuff. But I like modern technology going into beehives, which is very difficult. Trying to get new technology into anything agriculture is a hard job. I've got my new composite bee boxes come out, which are going very well. No painting, well finished. And again, completely different from the other beekeeping shops around. They're beautifully assembled, they're shiny, they're smooth, nice big dome, stainless steel screws on the side, bit of pizzazz in them. A lot of my beekeepers have 1 or 2 hives, so they want it to look nice. It's beside their house. They don't want an old white box. They like the little gable roof, and they like the shiny bits. People are like bowerbirds. It's the same in the motorcycle industry. They're like bowerbirds. They like shiny shit.
Is it an expensive hobby to get into?
Well, compared to what? What's expensive? If you're broke, yes. It depends on your disposable income before it becomes expensive. I've got customers that come in and just go, I want one of these, and all this, and here's the black card, thanks very much, stick it on it. And no flinching. I have other customers come in who are struggling and they need another box and are struggling. So we source them maybe a second-hand box from out the back to get them out of their little bind for a couple of weeks. It's what do you call expensive? That's a personal question. To me, that's a personal question. And that goes back to when I was making classic trailers. On what's an expensive trailer? I have customers that come in and they'll, $2,500 for a trailer. Oh, I can buy a trailer for $600. You can buy a box trailer or a kit set one out of Bunnings for $600. Will it tow? No. Is it waterproof? No. Will it fall apart? Yes. What's its resale value? Nothing. Or you buy a classic trailer and you could probably sell it for more than you bought it for second hand in 12 months' time. And we went to a Harley Davidson rally with a load of trailers, and they've just come, man, these are cheap, because Harley have already taught them that everything's going to cost them a fistful of money. You've got to get to that level of motorcycling to get into the hog club, because Harleys aren't the cheapest bike around. And you go into any Harley Davidson group, and HD stands for hundreds of dollars. So we just presented a product that was reasonably priced, and we sold a lot of them to Harley owners, and they loved them.
You bought the motorcycle trailer business. Why? Are you a motorcyclist?
I was then. I still am a motorcyclist, but I don't get to ride my bike or bikes like I haven't for years, because I'm just so tied up with the businesses. And I was actually making motorcycle trailers before the other company that I bought was. And then they were mates of mine, and it came up for sale, and I've just gone, I'll buy this. I was working for the Namble Sugar Mill at the time, and I was on casual, so there was 6 months of the year I was out of work. So my accountant said, are you buying yourself a job or you're buying yourself a business? And it was a bit of both. So, but it was successful. We brought 2 kids up. We took them on overseas holidays every year, and it had expanded and expanded and expanded. So, it was all right. And I think the sales figures have gone back probably 20 years because of the world economics and the economy of the place at the time. But it's still there. We're still getting customers ring us up, we want to buy one of your trailers. The market's still there, but hopefully somebody will pick it up and run with it, and they'll have a ball. It's a great business. It's a great market. Better than just a great business. It's a great market. Your customers are wonderful people,
What sort of motorbikes do you have?
I'm usually a winghead, what they call a wing nut. I like gold wings. They're big, reliable, bulletproof, smooth, quiet, easy to handle.
Stereo,
Yeah, all that stuff. Bit of bling.
panniers, the whole lot.
Yeah, mind you, but I don't cover it with aftermarket chrome stuff. I'm just happy with the bike as it is. But yeah, most people are content with a bike that they've had and not had trouble with. Usually.
There's the old saying that if you own a Harley, you've got to also own a ute, so you can go pick it up.
Obviously, the other saying. No, I don't know whether we should put that one on. What do Harleys and cattle dogs have in common? They both like coming home in the back of the ute after a day's run. But that's not fun. No, it's not fair because, Harleys have...
They become more reliable over the years.
Absolutely. The last 10 or 15 years is big gains in reliability and quality and all sorts of stuff. And a big job to do that too, to pull them out of their bad name of stuff like that. That was a mega job. But there's so many bikes. It's not just Harleys. People love their Suzukis or Ducatis because that's their brand. That's their bike, and their car owners are the same. That people love Fords and people love Holdens. It's your passion. It's a personal thing more than just a branding, but it usually comes from what you've had for a long time and no trouble. If it's been good to you, you usually like them.
These have been good to you over the years. Why do you think that the trailer business has sort of been, to a degree, put to the side and the bees expanded at such a rapid rate?
The trailer business and the motorcycle trailer business and tow bars was down because of the economy, and I needed something else to fill the void.
It was good the bank got behind you.
No, we don't deal with that bank with the bees.
But when they sort of said, just do it.
No, that was the bank manager said, do it. We don't, that bank has nothing to do with the beekeeping side. That's another bank. We've all together. They don't have their finger in that at all. She was the one that sort of gave me the nudge to go, do it. But I think it was a lot of right place, right time was a critical thing. And I think that would be a lucky thing, or maybe not so lucky, but right place, right time. The Sunshine Coast has a lot of beekeepers, enormous amount of beekeepers for the area. Our closest beekeeping shop is quite a distance away, and people having to travel quite a long way. So right beside the highway, so we even get customers from Gladstone, Rockhampton coming down, travelling to Brisbane, and we're just off the highway. It's a gift. We're basically the only shop on the highway, probably beekeeping shop, maybe even down to closer to Sydney way. There's,
wow.
All the others you have to go a fair way off the highway to get, or into the city to get. And we're, Yandini, we're right beside the highway actually.
Do people like to actually physically look and hold and touch and palpate, as it were?
Yeah, that's come from my time in retail. People like to have choice. They love to be able to pick up, touch, feel, compare, and just look at a product. Going into a shop and saying, "I'd like one of these." No problem. We'll order one in for you. You might get there and it might be a lemon. You might get it and you go, "That's not what I want." Yes, but you ordered it. It's yours. You've got to pay for it because we got it in specially for you. Well, I carry, for extractors, for instance, I carry 2-frame, 4-frame electric, 6-frame electric, a new one that we just got in, 24 volt, 240 volt, and a manual in a combination for people off the grid.
How popular is that one going?
Haven't sold one yet. But people off the grid aren't a common customer.
Yeah.
But I only bought 2, but they'll sell.
What are you manufacturing in the bee equipment?
All my extractors I buy without legs, they're stands, because we make stainless steel trolleys in-house, which are more stable, because once you're finished extracting, you need to wash it out. So we make it so you can wheel it outside and hose it out. Other ones you have to carry, and on their 3 little legs, which is the predominant what they put extractors on for stability, is the legs are just not strong enough. They wobble and shake all over the place. So the stainless steel trolleys are hugely popular. The uncapping trays, we make the stands for them, make them all work height. We make bee stands to put your hives on. So when you're working on your hive, it's work height. You stop the bending over. Just simple things that if you're going to make it, put a little bit of thought into it and make it easier. It's a really important thing. There's enough work in beekeeping without sort of putting bricks in your way. Just make them easy. Nice aluminium handles on the bee boxes so you can hold them quite easily, instead of the standard ones which are routed holes that you can barely get 3 fingers in, in a 40-kilo box. You got to pick it up with 3 fingertips on each side. And we just put good handles on to make it user-friendly.
You also deal with the half frame?
Yeah, that's a thing that I like, half-depth frames. And we still get people that headbutt them because, oh no, I'm running full depths, I'll stay with full depths. Half depths I like because the weight of them, when they're full, they're only 25 kilos. They're easy to use. They're easy to uncap. You get 2 in your extractor instead of, you can double up in your extractor. The little kids can use it. The lady beekeepers can use it. And so many of the older beekeepers, men and women, that are coming back or want to get it into their retirement, half-depth boxes are just user-friendly for them because my beekeeping instructor, teacher, he's 81. He uses half-depths. He's 81, still beekeeping.
How important is it to have a mentor in the beekeeping world?
Oh, that's a really good thing to have. I have a couple of mentors. Bill, that is my mentor locally, he is an ex-professional beekeeper, but he's locally, he's down the road. But I had another one up in Townsville that was a professional beekeeper too, and a customer from the motorcycle trailer business that I found out that he had bees as well, and basically tell you anything that you need to know. Most professional beekeepers are like that, or beekeepers are like that. That will help you. Very few won't give you the time of day, but most of them, if you've got a problem, they'll help you.
Do they encourage to try and expand your beekeeping horizon?
Yeah, they try to help you in any way. If you've got a question, just ask. And if you don't know, ask. I don't have a problem if people, on anything, if you don't know, ask. If you know and you do it wrong, well, you're an idiot.
What's the hardest thing about beekeeping?
Probably lifting up the full depth supers because they're so heavy. In my apiary site, because I don't use full depth supers, the hardest thing, well, that's what I try to take away. In my whole businesses, I try to eliminate hard jobs. Even in the fiberglass business, all the molds were on wheels. So it was a one-man operation. You could pick one end up and wheel it outside or wheel it over the side and bring the other one in. In the assembly, everything had to be able to be moved easily by one person. And it's about making jobs easy. And the same in the bee industry. Make the boxes smaller and easier to use. Make them, the stands, the right height so they're easier to use. hard jobs don't get done. That's just human nature. They just get put aside. I had to help a friend of mine, and he had 4 supers, 4 full-depth supers on his hives, full. What are you doing this for? I was really busy and it was too hard, so I just put another box on the top. So here we are, trying to lift total stretch, because the stands that he had his hives on were just ad hoc, so they were already too high for a start. And then you've got your brood box and 4 supers on top, so they're 5 high,
Massive.
full.
Massive.
Yeah, massive, full. You're trying to pick up 45 kilo boxes at arm's reach, one on either side, bees going mental everywhere, and bring them down. So we extracted all them, and we put half-depth boxes on. Now when he can't do it, his wife does it, because she can manage the half-depth boxes. Make it easy.
And doesn't wait till there's that much honey.
That's it.
What's the optimum size for a hive? I've seen a lot of, say, 3-deck with the full depth supers, but say 3 of them. So
two supers and a brood box.
Yeah. What's the optimum?
That really does depend on where you are in the honey flow. But generally, professional beekeepers will run 1 brood box and 1 super. Occasionally, they'll have a second super on if there's a huge honey flow or there's a huge amount of flowers. But it's usually 1 and 1. I know when I first started beekeeping, we could go 1 brood box, 2 supers, or even 3 supers, and it would be, see you in 6 months' time, pre-small hive beetle. But now you have to be in your hive about every 3 or 4 weeks, which is not too often, but it's a good space, about once a month. And check your beetle traps, they're working, that the beetles haven't infested your hive, because they can smash a hive in 3 weeks.
What do you do? What do you find? What are you looking for? Is it fairly apparent?
Lots of beetles running around. So we still get beekeepers that don't have beetle traps, and they open the hive and there's 50 or 100 beetles running around. That's nearly not salvageable.
If you do see them and you put the trap in straight away,
you may, depending on how many beetles there are, you need to have traps. You're basically nearly impossible to run beehives without beetle traps these days.
You put the diatomaceous earth in under the trap for basically to kill the beetles.
Yeah, the DE powder or diatomaceous earth works really well on a screen bottom board. So I've got these screen bottom boards where the bees come in the bottom entrance, and there's a stainless steel mesh, and it's 3.3 millimeter mesh. So the bees can't actually get through the mesh, but the beetles can, and the bees chase the beetles through the mesh, and they fall onto the tray with diatomaceous earth on it. And they basically get it all over them. Beetles only have grips or hooks on their front 2 legs, and the powder just builds up into like balls, and they get it under their wings and legs, and they're basically snookered. They can't move, and they just dehydrate because it's a dry powder, so it will just dry things. That's really good, because if you've got grubs hatching out too, if you've got grubs in your hive of small hive beetle grubs, they'll hatch out and they'll fall down, and they'll get into the diatomaceous, they'll die as well. And when you're finished, you just chuck the diatomaceous earth on the ground, because it's good for your soil. It's a natural, it's a inert product, so no chemicals, nothing like that. So that's easy.
Well, I think the DE is fossilized mollusk.
Yes, from 40 million years ago. They were like plankton, I think. Similar thing. Then you can have oil traps. There's another company that makes an oil trap instead of diatomaceous earth. You can put some sort of cooking oil or apple cider vinegar underneath. Does a similar job. The beetles fall in and basically drown. Then you can put traps in between the frames in the top that can have diatomaceous earth or a cooking oil or apple cider vinegar in them as well. I find cooking oil climbs out of the container just like it does on your kitchen bench. You know, you've always got cooking oil under your container of cooking oil. It wants to climb out of the container. It just does what it does. Whereas the apple cider vinegar will stay in there. The containers stay cleaner, and it's a little bit thinner. And it does the same job. The beetles drown in it and get stuck in the traps. And then they've got little core flute ones, which are hugely popular in my shop, that you just put 4 in the corner underneath the lids. And we put a cockroach bait in each of them, and a very, very small amount, like enough, wouldn't even cover your fingernail, on your little finger. It's a very small amount in each one of them. And we sell lots of them. They last about 2 months, and customers just love them. They just come back after 2 months. They said they're the best ones on the market. So pretty pleased about how they work. It's the ones that I use the most of. But
you've been fairly innovative with what you've designed for the bottom board.
Oh yeah, my screen bottom board that I have was a bottom board just made out of wood. That's quite readily available. But I've had it out of my composite. I get them made out of my composite material because I looked at it and thought, trying to paint one of those things would be just a nightmare. And I'm a painter. It would just be a nightmare to paint it and still make it work. You know, painting the little track underneath so the drawer slides in and out, and then painting the board. I've gone, that's just a headache. And people would just do it out of acrylic because it's quick and easy, and it would make it harder to use again. So I was the first person that had them made out of the composite, and it's worked very well. People love it because, one, no paint, take it home, use it. The stainless steel shiny screws on the sides, that a bit of care has gone into it, matches their box with shiny stainless steel screws in it. The little bling parts.
Looks good in the backyard.
That's it. We're all bowerbirds, especially in the shop, all these little shiny things lined up. It's the people's passion. You just go with it.
What do you think of flow hives?
If we didn't have small hive beetles, that would be a big headache for me. But they can be quite a problem with small hive beetle.
What do you put that down to?
The sizzle that the flow hive is sold with, and it's very good. It's very professionally written, and it's very, very well done, and they're very well presented. They are very appealing looking bee boxes.
Do they work?
Yes and no. I've got customers, they work fine, and I've got customers, they hate them. So it's a hard call.
Fords and Holdens?
No, I would say a lot of people that buy them have them bought for them as gifts. I have quite a few customers that their wife has bought them or something like that as a gift. I had one customer in the other day, and his wife bought him a flow hive so he'd get back into beekeeping because he wanted, but he said a new extractor would have been far better. But now he has both. He has a flow and a Langstroth, and he's learning that the bees don't like the flow box, which, because it's all plastic. It's the same with plastic frames. The bees don't like plastic frames until you coat them in wax and beeswax, and then they use them fine. A lot of people get the misconception with probably the sizzle that's presented with the flow. All you have to do is turn the tap at the back and the honey runs out.
Well, that's how it was marketed.
That's how it was marketed, and people don't remember the other stuff that goes with it. They only remember the easy bit and forget that there's other things that go along with it.
So what did they forget?
I don't know whether flow have forgotten to put the information in. I think people just ignore it when they're reading it, and they come into the shop, I don't need to do that because I've got a flow hive. Well, yes, you do, because you're still a beekeeper. You still
Don't need to do what?
don't have to look in the bottom box.
So it makes for lazy beekeepers.
That's basically it in a nutshell. If they want one hive and only one hive, it's pretty ideal for them. But they still must look after it like a beekeeper. They still must inspect the brood box. They still must keep their beetle traps up to speed and things like that. And that's what a lot of them think they don't have to do. It's a set and forget type of thing, is the impression that they get, and they want it to be that way. But even Flo will tell you that it's not.
What are you looking for when you go into the brood box?
The quality of the frames, what they're like, that you've got a good brood being laid by the queen. The frames that the queen's laying her brood on are in good order and not getting too old and dark and black, and the bees aren't eating the corners away, because they get old and black on the sides, and then the brood area gets smaller. So you get a weaker hive. So then it becomes more susceptible to small hive beetle. So it's a catch-22. So you must rob the brood box with their honey stores and put new supers in the middle to keep your brood frames fresh, so you get plenty of bees. Strong hive will keep the small hive beetle at bay fairly well.
What about those ones, you talk about the old frames in the centre of the brood chamber. What do you do with them? Do you discard them, or do you make new hives out of them?
If you take the two honey stores out of the brood box, which are the two outside frames, if you do that once or twice a year when you've got a honey flow, and you put new frames in the middle, so the middle ones eventually work to the outside, and that's getting rid of the old frames in the middle. So then they eventually get to the outside and they fill them up with honey, and you can rob them of the honey in those frames. And if the frames aren't any good to reuse again, you can either cut the wax out, put new foundation in, or if the frame's no good, you can cut the wax out and burn the frame, or just replace it.
So if it's full of brood, though, and you say it might be reducing, you've just got to sacrifice it sometimes.
They just get pushed out to the sides. So that's why you put new frames in the middle, so that the old ones just slowly work their way out. So the queen's always got nice comb to lay her eggs in. And mould, that's what you've got to really look for in your boxes, is frames with mould on. Bees will not touch a frame with mould on.
So when you're putting new frames into the brood box, you put them into the centre, not to the outside.
Yeah, put them in the middle, yeah.
What's the biggest mistake that new beekeepers make?
Oh, so many. But I think that the biggest mistake I find is trying to reinvent the wheel. We've been beekeeping with the Langstroth system for over 100 years. And even a flow is a basic Langstroth system. And they come up with new things, and they're trying to reinvent it. Like after 100 years, they've just about got all the bugs out. And if you don't try to reinvent the wheel and just go with it for a while, it'll work. It'll work. I just put something very similar to that on my Facebook page. Someone said, "What problems will I have as a new beekeeper?" I said, "Don't try to reinvent the wheel, and you'll do fine. Just go along with what people are using now, and it will work." Things like the new uncapper that you got to hold in your hand and put against your body and uncap. It's messy. A hot knife is so clean and easy, or a cold knife, just uncapping into a bucket. But the demonstration of trying to uncap inside a bucket with a frame and a long knife is like, it's impossible. But people fall for those silly demonstrations. I think we've got most of the bugs out, but there's all sorts of new stuff coming out. Spiky rollers, so you don't have to, you have an uncapping knife. So you run the spiky roller, and sure it does. It pierces all the honey cells. And does the honey spin out? Not efficiently, because it's only got a hole. You haven't taken the whole cap off. So they're harder to spin out. Yes, but I don't have wax cappings to deal with. Wax cappings are an important part in the beekeeping industry because we buy them to melt them down to make beeswax foundation sheets, and it's part of that. But we get people go, oh, I didn't have many, so I just throw them away. Which, when you start to think of how the bees make the wax, it's a real waste of a product that your bees have spent all that time making. They want the honey because they want that bit, but they're throwing an important part away because they've only got a little bit. I buy wax off my customers. Some of them come in with 1/2 kilo in a block. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me whether it's 1/2 kilo or 200 kilos. It goes into my wax melter, which holds 240 kilos, and it all turns to liquid. It's all used again. None of it's wasted.
You said a little while ago that you're a painter. Is that your trade? Because you've sounded, from what you said, you've worked in David Jones, the Nambour Mill, your motorcycle business, your bee business. What do you put all that down to? Jack of all trades, master of plenty?
I was painting when I was in school with my father. So by the time I was 17 and stopped working with Dad and got another job for something else to do, you were already a master painter by that time. We didn't have holidays. You went to work. That's what you did. You know, my father was painting housing commission houses, and school holidays comes and you went to work and became a painter and wallpaper. And it's a good thing to know is how to paint. And then later I learned how to spray paint. When I was at Ford, they put you in a booth. Here's a gun. If you're there at lunchtime, you can stay there. If you're not, you'll never get back in there because they've done all the prep work. And if you can't make paint hang on the side of a car in 4 hours, you're not going to get it.
No. What's the trick?
Don't put too much on. You put too much on, it falls off. It's pretty simple. But yeah, listen to the guys that are teaching you. But some people can't do it. It's you can either do it or you can't. It's that's how it is.
So there's an art to it.
Oh yeah. You like not everybody can pick up a spray gun, even if all the work's done, and just start painting a car. You'll put lines all over it, or the paint won't be even, and it'll have shadows and dull spots, and not enough here, and flat there, and running off there. So even though all the groundwork's done for you, and you've got the best equipment that you could ever want for, there's some people that can't do it.
So you were still a Ford man?
No, I only work for Ford.
Favourite car?
I don't know whether I have a favourite car. I like my Crosley. Not many people have got one of those. It's a 1928 Crosley Chelsea.
How often do you take that out?
I don't. It's a basket case. It needs a complete rebuild. But it's one of the Queen Mum's cars when she came to Australia with the King.
The actual car that you own?
Oh yeah, they brought a handful of them over in the Britannica. Amazingly enough, they had, I'm not sure of the number, but it was like 18 cars, 18 Crosleys in the Britannica hull when they came to South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand on the tour. And they left some in South Africa, some in Australia, and some in New Zealand.
And you managed to collect one of them.
Was that a score or what?
How did that happen?
Fluke was I had a mate of mine. What did I have? I had an EH Holden that I wanted to rebuild, and a mate of mine says, "That's not your car. It's just not you." He says, "You want an old car," because he knew me. He knew the style that I wanted, the nice running boards coming down and the older style, but a nice car. No particular brand was in mind, just that type of car, 1930, 40 style. And he was at the markets in Gympie one time, and a guy had a little picture of it. Not even the car, just a little A4 picture. And he rang me up and he says, "I found your car." So, we bought it.
And what's the future of that, Crosley?
I need to build another shed, I think, and just start doing it. It's very complete, but run down. It's 100 years old. It's allowed to be tired. So
you're going to do a frame-up restoration?
Yeah, the hard part is getting body frames, because it's a timber frame, timber body. There's not one book published in the world that teaches how to rebuild timber-bodied cars.
Wow.
I find that extraordinary. I've searched and searched and searched, and my friend that's a coach builder, he said, there isn't one. You can do the chassis, you can do the wiring, you can do the engine. But they missed coach building, because the coaches were built by coachmen that used to build horse coaches, and then they went on to car coaches, and then in 2 years they swapped to metal bodies.
Is it like an elaborate carpentry?
I couldn't tell you on that one, because I'm not a wood man.
What are you going to do to get the frame sorted?
Duplicated. The frame's still there. It's just parts of it rotted away, but the other side's fine. So I've already bought an old bandsaw that used to be in a furniture shop. So it's a big bandsaw with a big throat on it. So I've got that, because that's what you'll need to cut out the patterns. So that, and somebody who's a bit clever with wood. That's basically it. And you just duplicate it. I've made another cradle already, so I've lifted the body off and put it on another cradle, and I made another cradle the same as the chassis, so the body would sit straight. And that's what they used to do, was they made the bodies on cradles, and then the chassis come along and they just dumped it on. Pretty much how they make cars now, but old, made out of wood, and beautifully made. Like the interior lights, cut glass.
Really?
It's just this little cut glass dome, and the wire runs down to this little round brass toggle switch that you have, and the instruments are beveled glass instruments, so you only get that in expensive cars, because the Crosley was the royal car before Rolls-Royce.
Wow.
But the Crosley brothers basically went broke because they gave so much money away. When the Depression came, they just ran out of dollars. I think they gave £660,000 in 1925-28, those eras, which today's money is
massive.
Is massive amount. It's millions and millions to General Booth. General Booth started the Salvation Army.
Okay.
So General Booth was going to Africa, Australia, New Zealand, to the colonies as the Salvation Army. Because the Crosley family was a very, very religious family, as a lot of them were in those days. And the Crosley brothers lost some of their children to to childhood diseases like diphtheria and whooping cough and all those things that were quite common in those days. And didn't matter how much money you had no influence on whether your children got those diseases and lived or died. Talking before the Second World War, and that time, that wasn't there. That sort of technology that we take for granted these days wasn't there. And so it had a big effect on them. But and like Crosley stationary engines, I have some of those too. They're built to last forever, and they still do.
And you're still looking for more?
No, I've got got half a dozen in the shed. That's enough, I think.
You're also a Taekwondo black belt. Why did you? What was the attraction for Taekwondo back in the day?
When I was at Ford. One of my fellow workers started doing it, and he said, "Come on down," because he lived around the corner. He said, "Come with me." So I did, and it just kept going.
And how far did you go?
I used to be an instructor in one of the schools, but it got a little bit political.
As it can do in the martial arts world.
I hear that quite often. It gets, and apparently it's not just our school. It's across the board on most martial arts. It can get a little bit political, which is really sad.
Yes, it is. But you're back into it and refound your passion. How did that come about?
One of my customers walked in the door, and we're looking at each other going, "I know you," and he's going, "You look familiar, but we can't remember it." And then my beekeeping teacher, who's 81, Bill, he's also my Taekwondo teacher, walked in, and Glenn looks around and goes, "Bill, Steve, Glenn." We're all into bees, or Glenn's just starting to get into bees, and we're all sort of retired Taekwondo teachers. And Glenn's saying, "Oh, I still try to do, but it would be good if I had somewhere to do it that wasn't just at home in the garage with, to do it with somebody. You always put more passion into it rather than doing it by yourself." And I said, "No problems. We got the facilities. Let's do it." So we started doing it, and it's been great. We've been doing it for about 3 or 4 months now, and I feel a lot better. Getting my flexibility back, and
it's a hard thing as you get older.
That's an understatement. When I was teaching, we used to do 50 push-ups and 100 sit-ups, and I could nearly do the splits, and that was just a matter of course. I'd always been like that. And then first night, okay, 15 push-ups, and I get 1, and I go, bit out of shape. And even though I'm reasonably fit because I've got a scrap metal yard, and if you're in the scrap metal yard throwing bits of steel around, you keep some sort of strength. But
probably lucky you did.
Probably, but it's been good going back and doing it and learning all your patterns again. But lucky we don't have to start from the scratch and learn all the movements and where to put your hands and legs and things like that. You just got to put the combinations back to order. Yeah.
You've done so many things in your lifetime, say working at the Nambour Sugar Mill, working at Ford, working at David Jones, and I'm sure numerous other jobs. What have you got to achieve now? What would you like to do before you pull the bails?
Oh, see, that was a big thing. When I was at Ford, the guys in Ford said to me, "What are you going to be doing in 25 years, Steve?" And it wasn't just me; it was about everybody. And I said, "My plan is to have a big house on acreage, and a big shed at my house, and a big factory, and they're going to do it." And I said, "I haven't got a clue. I have not a clue. But that's my plan. That was my big picture. Okay, to have that." But in front of your big picture, for everybody, and one of my neighbours told me that, you have your big picture, but in front of the big picture there's a whole myriad of small pictures that you have to go through and fulfill till you get to your big picture. And I think a lot of young people don't realise this, and they're not taught this, because the marketing today is you can have it now. Have it now and pay for it later. In the real world, that doesn't work. Anyway, so that was my goal of a big house on a small property, and a big shed at my house, and a factory and a big shed. What I was going to do, I had no idea. And they've all gone, oh yeah, you're going to be working here at Ford until you bloody retire like the rest of us. Well, Ford's gone. That plant shut down, is now Alcan aluminium or something, or Windows or G. James glass or something. And everybody's gone, so whatever. But I've got my big picture. I've got my big house. There's a big shed at my house and a small acreage. And I got my big factory. And I got my factory as classic trailers and making stuff. And then I ran out of things to do. Like, it stopped. I had no vision of, like, you've got to have a goal to keep you going.
Is that why you filled the picture in? Because are you focused on, or were you focused on that big picture?
You know, you're not focused on it. It doesn't take up all your space. That's the goal at the end. Other pictures in the front you have to deal with first to be able to get there. But it's there in the background. And then once I got to it, it's like you're on a journey, and you get to your destination, you go, okay, you're here now. And I've gone, and it was about 2 years I'm going, what do? I made the best trailer in Australia. A lot of people told me that it was the best motorcycle trailer on the market. People say, oh, you got a big head. But that's what was the goal, is to try to make the best. And you can't go, okay, now you make the best, sit back, because somebody will push you off the perch.
Do we need a big head, though, to achieve in this life?
No, you just got to have pride in your product. You know, and my customers were nice people. They're all motorcyclists, so it was always pleasant. I think in 30 years of making motorbike trailers, I had 2 horrible customers. You know, most of them were really nice people. You know, oh, if you're ever down here, drop in and we'll stay at our bloody, we're going to spare room and you can stay there and camp there as long as you like. Don't worry, just come on down. All over Australia got customers like that, just tell you all the time. We never managed to get there, but that's the type of people you'd be dealing with most of the time. But then I got to the big picture before the B shop, and I'm sort of at a loss what to do. And I thought, oh, maybe I'd like to do the B shop, you know, and going, oh yeah, that might be a good retirement business. It's not so physically demanding. I'm not having to drive around the country in my truck, you know, doing motorbike rallies and displays and stuff like that. And then the bank manager goes, do it. So we started that, and now I'm doing that. That's my retirement business, basically. Has it got out of hand? Well, it's looking that way. So,
is there a succession plan?
No. The 2 girls not really interested in it, and don't have any boys. Otherwise, they would probably have a motorcycle business, a motorcycle trailer business running. But yeah, that's a bit of a worry. But at the moment, my brother in New Zealand is interested in bailing out of his panel shop that he's done since he was apprenticed and looking for something fresh. And beekeeping sounds attractive, but coronavirus come along, and that was the end of getting younger brother over here and teaching him in beekeeping. But there may be a possibility of going Bee Positive International.
You are a mentor to many, as they say, a wingman, not only on the motorcycle, but in the beekeeping world. You are a wingman and teaching many. And Steve Kitney, I thank you for joining us over the bonnet.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's a pleasure.
Cheers.